Welcome to Historical History. On this channel, we bring you powerful documentaries about the greatest events, wars, and mysteries in human history. If you want to understand how the past shaped the world we live in today, you're in the right place. This is Historical History. Disclaimer.
This video is an animated historical documentary created for educational and informational purposes only. It presents documented events from World War II using visual recreations, animations, and narrative storytelling to help viewers better understand historical context. The content shown, including depictions of war, military forces, and political figures, is part of recorded history and is not intended to promote violence, hate, extremism, or any political ideology. Any symbols, uniforms, or historical references appearing in this video are used strictly for educational and documentary purposes. This channel does not support or glorify war, discrimination, or extremist beliefs. The goal of this documentary is to inform, educate, and encourage thoughtful discussion about historical events and their global impact.
In today's video, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most devastating conflicts in human history, World War II. This documentary explores how the war began, how Europe was rapidly transformed by conflict, and how a series of powerful decisions reshaped the modern world. We'll break down the key events, major battles, and turning points that defined the early years of the war. This isn't just a story about armies and strategy. It's a story about power, ambition, resistance, and the global consequences that still impact us today. Let's begin. Imagine this. A world still scarred from the horrors of the First World War. Cities were rebuilding, families were healing, and nations desperately wanted to believe that peace would last forever. But history does not stay silent for long, because deep in the shadows of Europe, a storm was quietly forming. Germany was broken, humiliated, crushed under the weight of defeat. And from that darkness, a man rose. Not with weapons at first, but with words. Crowds gathered. Voices shouted. Flags waved. He promised greatness. He promised revenge. He promised a new empire. His name, Adolf Hitler. And by 1939, Germany was not preparing for just another battle. Germany was preparing to reshape the entire world. What was coming would become the deadliest war in human history. World War II. The first strike. September 1st, 1939. The sun rose over Poland like any other morning. But the skies were not peaceful. They were filled with aircraft. German warplanes roared overhead. Then, explosions, fire, screams. In an instant, the invasion began. German forces attacked with terrifying speed. Tanks stormed forward. Soldiers moved like a machine. The world watched in disbelief. Because this was no ordinary war strategy. This was something new. Something unstoppable. Blitzkrieg. Lightning war. Fast. Brutal. Overwhelming. Poland's defenses collapsed within days. Entire cities were crushed before they could even respond. And just like that, the world realized peace was over. World War II had begun. But this was only the first move in a plan far larger than anyone imagined. Europe falls. Germany's war machine did not stop in Poland. It only grew stronger. The world hoped maybe Hitler would be satisfied. Maybe this was the end. But it wasn't. Because now, Germany turned its eyes west. And what followed was the fastest collapse of Europe in modern history. The storm moves west. Early 1940. Europe was holding its breath. France believed it was protected. Britain believed the sea would defend them. Other nations believed neutrality would save them. But Hitler believed Europe belonged to him. And then, the next strike came. One by one, nations fell. First, Denmark, a country taken in hours. Then, Norway, German troops landing like shadows from the sea. The world watched as Hitler's army moved with terrifying precision. Then came Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, each nation collapsing before they could even understand what was happening. Blitzkrieg was unstoppable. Tanks, planes, soldiers. all moving like a single deadly machine. Europe was falling, piece by piece. France, the unthinkable defeat. And then, Germany came for the greatest prize in the West. France. The French trusted the Maginot Line. Massive defenses. Concrete fortresses. A wall meant to stop any invasion. They believed Germany could never break through. But Hitler didn't attack where France expected. German tanks surged through the Ardennes forest. A route considered impossible. And suddenly, France was exposed. German forces poured in. Cities fell. Armies retreated. Civilians fled in terror. Paris, the heart of France, stood trembling. And then, it happened. Paris fell. The Eiffel Tower looked down, not on celebration, but occupation. France had collapsed in weeks. The world was stunned. Europe was trembling. Hitler at the edge of domination. Now Hitler stood almost unstoppable. Most of mainland Europe was under Nazi control. His empire was growing, like a shadow spreading across the continent. He believed victory was inevitable. Only one enemy remained. One final wall, standing against his domination. Across the English Channel, Britain, unconquered, unbroken, defiant. And Hitler knew, to control Europe, Britain had to fall, and Hitler knew, if Britain survived, his dream of total domination would never be complete. So he prepared the next step, the plan to invade Britain. Hitler wanted to crush Britain once and for all. Operation Sea Lion. The invasion of Britain was being planned. German soldiers waited. Ships were prepared. Tanks stood ready. But Hitler understood something terrifying. You cannot invade an island unless you control the skies above it. And so, before the invasion could begin, Germany launched a battle that would decide the fate of Europe. A battle fought not on land, but in the air. The Battle of Britain begins. Summer 1940. The skies above Britain filled with engines. German Luftwaffe bombers, escorted by fighter planes, crossed the channel like steel storms. Then, the bombing began. Airfields, radar stations, military bases. Germany struck again and again, trying to destroy Britain's defenses. The sound of war was everywhere. Roaring planes, explosions, sirens, smoke rising into the clouds. London burns. Soon, the attacks turned toward the cities. London, Coventry, Liverpool. Night after night, bombs fell from the sky. Buildings collapsed. Streets burned. Families ran for shelter. Children hid underground, in subway tunnels, listening to the world above them being torn apart. Britain was under siege. The Blitz had begun. It seemed impossible. How could anyone survive this? How could Britain endure? Against Hitler's unstoppable war machine, the RAF's last stand. But Britain was not alone in the skies. The Royal Air Force rose to meet them. Young pilots, some barely 20 years old, climbed into their Spitfires and Hurricanes, knowing each flight could be their last. Dogfights erupted above the clouds. Planes spiraled down in flames. The sky itself became a battlefield. Every day, Britain fought not just for survival, but for its future. Hitler's first major defeat. Germany believed Britain would break, that the people would surrender, that the RAF would collapse. But something unexpected happened. Britain held, against all odds. The Royal Air Force refused to fall. German losses grew heavier. The invasion became impossible. And for the first time, Hitler was forced to stop. The Battle of Britain was his first major defeat. And the world realized something powerful. Germany could be resisted. Germany could be stopped. Britain had survived the storm. But the war was far from over. Hitler was not finished. Not even close. Because now, his gaze turned east. Toward an enemy even larger. The Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa. Britain had survived. Hitler's dream of conquering the West had been delayed. The skies over London had proven something shocking. Germany was not invincible. But Hitler was not a man who accepted limits. He did not want half of Europe. He wanted all of it. And now, his ambition turned toward the east, toward the largest land empire on earth, the Soviet Union. The decision that changed history. Hitler believed the Soviet Union was weak. He believed it would collapse in months. He believed one massive strike would bring Germany ultimate victory. So he made the greatest gamble of the war. A decision that would change everything. Operation Barbarossa begins. June 22, 1941. Before sunrise. The silence of the Eastern Front shattered. Millions of German soldiers moved forward. The ground trembled beneath tanks. Artillery roared like thunder. Planes screamed across the sky. This was not just an invasion. It was the largest military assault in human history. Over 3 million troops. Thousands of tanks. Thousands of aircraft. A steel avalanche unleashed upon the Soviet Union. The operation had a name. Barbarossa. The lightning advance. At first, Germany advanced with terrifying speed. Entire Soviet armies were surrounded. Cities fell. Villages burned. Prisoners were taken by the hundreds of thousands. It looked like another blitzkrieg victory. Hitler believed the war was nearly won. He believed Moscow would fall. He believed the Soviet Union would break. But the East was different. The land was endless. The enemy was relentless. And time was running out. The Russian winter arrives. Then, the weather changed. Autumn became ice. Rain became snow. And the Russian winter arrived like a monster. Temperatures dropped to -30 degrees C, -40 degrees Celsius. German soldiers froze in their uniforms. Engines stopped. Fuel turned to sludge. Supplies vanished. The roads became graveyards of broken machines. The blitzkrieg slowed. Then stalled. Then began to bleed. Soviet resistance awakens. And the Soviets did not surrender. Instead, they fought back with desperation. Every village became a battlefield. Every street became a trap. The Red Army regrouped. Fresh troops arrived from Siberia. The Soviet people endured horrors. But they did not collapse. Germany had expected a quick victory. Instead, they had entered a nightmare. The greatest mistake. Operation Barbarossa was supposed to be Hitler's final triumph. Instead, it became his greatest mistake. Germany was now fighting a war too large, too brutal, too endless. The Eastern Front consumed everything. Men, machines, hope. Germany was bleeding. And the war was growing darker, bigger, unstoppable. Hitler had opened a door into hell itself. And soon, the entire world would be pulled into the fire. Because the next strike would come from across the oceans. At Pearl Harbor. The world is pulled into war. Europe was burning. Germany was fighting in the west. And now bleeding in the east. The war had already consumed millions. But the world still believed. Maybe this conflict would remain only in Europe. Maybe it could be contained. But history was about to prove something terrifying. This was not Europe's war anymore. This was about to become a world war. If you found this documentary informative, make sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Part 2 is coming very soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.